The president of the company being fired, the budgets being lowered, and top stars potentially on their way out. Is TNA Wrestling dead in the water already? At Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory 2023, it was announced that they would be returning to using the TNA Wrestling name starting at the 2024 Hard To Kill pay-per-view. It was a very exciting announcement and it was set to be a new era for the company. Fans were excited to see what changes would be made and what new wrestlers would be signing for TNA, as TNA would announce their pickups of wrestlers, and reports came out that they even made plays to try and sign CM Punk. And then the show itself, TNA Hard To Kill 2024, comes around, and it was okay. The matches were good, but in terms of presentation, TNA looked near the exact same as Impact Wrestling. Same setup, just different colors and a new logo. And no six-sided ring, which we will be having a word about in this video because that's very important. But regardless, this show saw numerous debuts of ex-WWE fame. In particular, Nic Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, is a very exciting pickup for TNA. It was a decent start for TNA, and it was a good show to build off of, but seemingly since this show took place, everything, and I mean everything, has just gone wrong. On the 7th of February 2024, it was announced by TNA's parent company, Anthem, that TNA president Scott D'Amore had been fired and removed from his position. Now, if you're not familiar with Scott D'Amore, him being removed as TNA president is a very big deal for the company. Scott D'Amore had worked for TNA as early as 2003 as a road agent and on-screen manager. He left TNA back in 2010, but after Anthem bought TNA in 2017, Scott was brought back as the head of creative for Impact before becoming an EVP, and then on March 13, 2023, it was announced that Scott D'Amore had become the president of Impact Wrestling, and it was Scott D'Amore who was at the forefront of reverting Impact back to TNA, and it was him in the ring at Bound for Glory who announced the change back to TNA Wrestling in the first place. And so it was really out of nowhere that he was removed from his position, and there was no real reason cited as to why he was fired. A few days later, reports would come out as to why he was fired, and apparently it came down to the fact that, well, Scott D'Amore wanted more for TNA. Scott D'Amore apparently wanted to up the budget for TNA as opposed to Anthem, who supposedly wanted to lower it, and as well it was said that Anthem wanted TNA to be closer to the Anthem brand, and so ultimately Scott D'Amore was removed from the position for someone from Anthem to fill in that position instead. It's said that Scott D'Amore fought tooth and nail to stay in the company and didn't want to agree to a mutual departure, which Anthem wanted to do, and even made an offer to buy TNA from Anthem for $10 million, which was rejected. And just like that, Scott D'Amore was gone from TNA. The man who led TNA Wrestling back out in 2024 and brought it back into wrestling was now out of the company not too long after the change had been made. And yeah, TNA sure has been left with an uncertain future. Another thing that's really hurt TNA at the moment is that they still have the same problem they had when it was Impact Wrestling, and that is their inability to retain their top stars. Some big stars have came out of TNA/Impact in the last few years, but the issue is they never stay with the company. TNA has often been used as a stepping stone company and the place that wrestlers go to before they go to WWE or now AEW even. And this is a problem that has stuck around now they're back as TNA. First it was Deonna Purrazzo, who didn't even make it to the Hard To Kill pay-per-view as she jumped ship to All Elite Wrestling and has already established herself as a big player in the AEW Women's Division and has a AEW Women's World Championship title match coming up. Then of course there's Trinity, who dropped her Knockouts title at Hard To Kill back to Jordynne Grace so she could return to the WWE as Naomi, which she did of course at the Royal Rumble this year. And then this past week there was a hellstorm on social media as a report came out that a top TNA star's contract is expiring soon, which led all of the TNA roster to tweet out the hourglass emoji, making everyone think there was going to be a mass TNA exodus. But it was eventually revealed that it was Steve Maclin whose contract was expiring, and then suddenly TNA announced that they had triggered a 1-year extension on Josh Alexander's contract. Nice, they actually retained a top talent. Well, yeah, but as I said, they triggered the option to extend it, which apparently Josh Alexander didn't want to do, as he wanted to explore free agency. And while it's been said that there's no worry of Josh Alexander potentially phoning it in, and it's still expected that he'll give his all for his last year in TNA, I don't know how good of a business model or strategy it is to renew your wrestlers when they don't want to be there. You know, essentially forcing your wrestlers to stay with you. And as for Steve Maclin, that's yet another big loss for TNA, as they have really built him up, and he's much more of a star than he was in WWE, and for TNA to do all that building up of him just for him to leave is the big problem that TNA has and always has had. The exact same thing has happened with Trinity. She came in from the WWE, they gave her a long title reign, and now she's headed back to the WWE. Deonna Purrazzo was one of TNA's biggest stars, and they've done all that just for her to go to AEW anyway. TNA is simply a stepping stone company. It's as simple as that. But despite all the chaos this past week due to Scott D'Amore leaving, at the No Surrender pay-per-view, the TNA locker room led by Eric Young opened the show and said that there will be no surrender for TNA. Nice. Through all this though, I think the biggest problem TNA faces is that, well, yeah, nothing's really changed, has it? It's something I've mentioned throughout the video, but from Impact to TNA, it's pretty much exactly the same on-screen product, presentation, star power, and overall show quality. It quite literally was just a name, logo, and color change, and despite signing some cool wrestlers like Nic Nemeth, Mustafa Ali, Danny Luna, who I'm a big fan of, and many more, the TNA roster still doesn't feel all that much bolstered, and it hardly feels like an upgrade from the Impact Wrestling roster, especially considering they've lost two of their biggest stars in Deonna Purrazzo and Trinity, and are about to lose Steve Maclin. It quite literally was just a change in aesthetic, and all the hype that TNA had going into Hard To Kill just kinda went away. And that's because the product just feels the exact same, and there's nothing special about it. Like, I bet you didn't even know there was a pay-per-view this past week. That's how little anybody is discussing TNA in the wider wrestling world. And to me personally, TNA's return was botched from the start, because if you're gonna do it and you're gonna bring back TNA without bringing back the six-sided ring, then what's even the point? Why are we even trying? That might sound like I'm exaggerating, but hear me out. Yes, I am aware that bumping on the six-sided ring absolutely sucks, and maybe the wrestlers don't want to bring it back because of that. But to me, the six-sided ring was TNA. It's what set them apart from every other wrestling company and was an instant eye-catcher, and especially in modern wrestling today, something like the six-sided ring really feels missing, and it would really make TNA stand out amongst the WWE and AEW crowd, as well as create new fans who have never seen the six-sided ring and are intrigued by it. But as far as I'm aware, TNA has not created any new fans with this rebrand. They only brought a couple of old TNA fans back, who are probably gone already after they realized, oh wait, this is nothing like the TNA I used to watch. So yeah, all being said, TNA might be dead already. But to be honest, they aren't actually gonna die, are they? Like, the company is never gonna actually die. Like, they never have, and they never will. The amount of times it's been rumored and never happened, they'll always be around in some way. But unfortunately, they're never going to be a major player in the same way they once were, and don't get it twisted, I want TNA to do well. I was so excited when they announced the TNA return. I thought it was long overdue, and I've always been a TNA fan. My channel would be nothing without it after all. The biggest suggestion I can possibly make is to bring back the six-sided ring. That cannot be stressed enough. That's going to be it from me though. What do you guys think of the current state of TNA? Leave it in the comments below, as well as leaving a like and subscribing to the Top 10 Wrestling channel for more wrestling content. I'll see you all in the future. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.